35 minutes after the hour. Glad to have you with us. Glad to be with you. This primary for the Republicans to see who runs against Claire McCaskill. The guy who wins this ought to be Austin Petersen. He understands the Constitution. He understands liberty and freedom. He is, in my mind, the best candidate, perhaps the best Senate candidate I've ever seen the Republicans field. I'm really that enthused by his candidacy. He tweeted out, fact, no president since Reagan has done as much for liberty as that real Donald Trump. And some things Trump has done that I don't agree with, but I do think Trump has done a pretty remarkable job in the first year and a half when it comes to cutting regulations. So let's find out from Austin just what he meant. Austin, welcome. How are you?
Morning, Gary. Thanks so much for having me, brother.
Glad to have you. What exactly did you mean when you said, were you just limiting that to decreased regulations?
Well, a lot of things. It's unfortunate that, for some people, I think it's kind of stake or starve when it comes to the president. But I was reacting to the right to try bill that he signed. I mean, that's been something that people like you and me have been pushing for years, that patients who are terminal would have the right to try certain types of medications, perhaps, or procedures that the FDA didn't want us to have. So I was just delighted because, we just never saw that kind of move towards liberty from many of his predecessors. And so that's why I posted that. And I think what's unfortunate, Gary, is that the president is so polarizing. If you say one nice thing about him, there's just people who are just going to hate you and throw poo. And then if you say something, not nice, or if you disagree with the president on something, then, the other side throws poo. But I'm just trying to be like Ben Shapiro, just call balls and strikes. And, when the president does something great, I want to praise him. And yes, the regulations, of course, he's approved far fewer regulations, than his predecessors. By a lot. And I could show you the charts, and they're massive. So, yeah, I was reacting to the right to try and analyzing the president in terms of the last great president, and that was Ronald Reagan, hands down. If you don't like Reagan, then I guess we're just not going to agree here, because I thought Reagan was a good president, too, despite the fact he had some things that we didn't agree with either.
For those people who don't know, and I'm sure most of my listeners do, right to try is simply a piece of legislation that says you're dying of a terminal, a fatal illness. You ought to have the right to try drugs that haven't been fully approved by the Food and Drug Administration. And I agree with that. I wish it had even gone further, but boy, that is a huge step. What's the worst that could happen? You're dying already.
It is. And again, you and I know, Gary, that big government is the problem. We don't even believe in the FDA. At least I don't. I think that we should have private ratings agencies doing this. But when the president steps in and makes a bold move like this, honestly, you have to praise him. I don't understand why people can't look past the politician to see the policy. And when you're talking about Neil Gorsuch, when you're talking about pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, the president did that with impunity. The way that he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord and the screeching from the liberals, from the central planners in Washington, who told us we were all going to die if we didn't stay in the Paris Climate Accord. Heck, even Mitt Romney said that we, tried to chastise the president for that.
Romney.
Come on. Again, it's about balls and strikes. I didn't agree with him signing the $1.3 trillion omnibus bill. He should have vetoed that like he threatened to do. But quite frankly, that's why I'm running for the U.S. Senate, is because I want to whisper in his ear and say, hey, Mr. President, follow your instincts here. You've got good instincts. And that's why I'm running, Gary. The guy needs some backup and some objective backup. Somebody who will say, listen, I don't agree with this omnibus. I don't agree with tariffs or what have you. But let's double down on the tax cuts. Let's go further. Let's get Obamacare passed, the repeal passed. And, balls and strikes, Gary, that's what it is. It's about being objective, not allowing yourself to be, cowed into submission by the pro-Trump, anti-Trump forces, but being a good, objective listener, a statesman. That's why I am running for the U.S. Senate.
Austin Petersen, who is, in fact, in the primary fight to represent the Republicans against Claire McCaskill. Give your website out, Austin.
Yeah, AustinForSenate.com. That's Austin, the number 4, AustinForSenate.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at AP for Liberty.
All right, I'm going to go over the last time you were on. Right after you left, we got some questions from listeners. I don't have them all in front of me, but one I do remember. And I know you've already answered this, and you're probably tired of answering it over and over again. But some guy sent me a message and said, is he an atheist? And I tried to explain that you are not an atheist, but you have some questions, and I don't know who doesn't. But go ahead and explain your position.
Yeah, of course. And anybody who wants to get a little more in-depth can read the piece that I wrote in the Springfield News Leader, titled "Why I Am a Pro-Life Agnostic." And an agnostic is just someone who says that they don't claim to know about a higher power. It does not claim to have superior knowledge about a higher power. And I admit that. I think it's important to be transparent with the voters of Missouri. I think the problem is most people just don't know what that is. You know, they're used to having being able to comfortably say, oh, he's a Baptist or a Lutheran or what have you. But people were asking about my beliefs and my religious beliefs. And obviously I'm a huge pro-religious liberty guy. I mean, I've been fighting for religious liberty for years. But as for my own personal inclinations, if people ask, I tell them that I am someone who doesn't know if there's a higher power. I'm willing to consider evidence and listen, and I love my church family. I'm willing to go to church with friends, people who invite me, and keep an open mind. But I don't claim to know something that I don't know. I can't offer anything to the people of Missouri and say, this is what I know to be true, when that's not true. And I think keeping an open mind is a good thing. It's actually pretty rare. And, of course, a lot of people are willing to use religion to wear on their sleeves to try and earn people's votes. They'll tell you what you want to hear, and I've taken a great risk by being honest. I think I should get a little bit of credit for that. Don't you think so, Gary?
I think you should get a lot of credit for that, because I'm tired of hip, slick, and smooth-talking politicians who tell me what I want to hear, and then when they get down the street and talk to the next guy, they change what they said and tell him what he wants to hear. I want an honest-to-God, honest senator who will follow the Constitution and who isn't afraid to tell me what he believes. Now, I may not agree with you on 100%, but I agree with you on more than anybody else that's out there. And, next to having me as my own senator, I guess I'm going to have to rely on you.
Well, like I say, you may not always agree with me, but you'll always know where I stand. I'm not like Claire McCaskill, flip-flopping every which way from Sunday. Claire McCaskill and Josh Hawley, they literally get their opinions from the polls. They do a poll, and then they get an opinion based on whatever the poll tells them. I have principles. I have philosophical underpinnings. Like I have a belief in free market economics based on the research and the evidence that's available out there. Freedom works. America was founded on freedom, and religious freedom is one of the biggest, most important ones. It's mentioned right up there in the First Amendment. Religious liberty is there, and I've chosen to follow my conscience, and I refuse to lie to people to get elected, Gary, because at the end of the day, even if I lose, I have to live another 50, 60 years. I want to, be able to sleep well with a clear conscience, and a lot of people will lie just to get elected. I mean, what do you think, Claire McCaskill? How do you think she got elected twice and is going for a third term? But I think it's important for us to be upfront and transparent about who we are. And what really brings us together as Americans, what matters, is that I will defend to the death your right to say what you want to say, to believe what you want to believe. And that's the utmost primacy. Liberty is of utmost primacy. Some people have already told me, Gary, they can't support me for this reason. They said, Austin, I need you to be of my particular faith. You need to believe what I believe, or I cannot vote for you. And I have to just look them in the eye and say, well, I understand, and I'm sorry that I can't accommodate you, but I hope that at the end of the day, when you walk into that ballot box on August 7th in the Republican primary, and you look at the options that are available to you, that you will reconsider that a pro-life constitutional conservative who's honest, who will defend the interests of the citizens of Missouri, who will take seriously their oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, so help me God, then Austin Petersen is your man. And that's just where I'm at, Gary, and I'm sticking with it.
If you like your attorney general, You can keep
You can keep him.
Austin, I got a problem here. I had to go all the way over to my producer's house to steal his Austin Petersen for Senate yard sign.
You didn't steal it from me. No, it's still there.
I was there this morning. It's in my car.
No. You're not telling the truth.
Well, you know what? We got my buddy Ryan Estes, who's there in Jeff City, and he does the yard sign delivery for mid-Missouri. So I'll get Ryan to drop by here probably this week. Sound good?
All right, because I'm not kidding. I mean, I am 100% in favor of this guy being the next senator. I've donated money. I put him on the air whenever I can. I'll put up a yard sign. He has got to make it. This will be I
can't tell you, Gary, how many times I've been in mid-Missouri at an event, and somebody's like, oh, yeah, Austin on Gary Nolan. I mean, you've been an incredible help to us, Gary. Everybody around there in the Columbia area knows your name. Everybody knows Gary's, got it right. He's got his facts straight. He's got his head screwed on straight. And the thing is that we're destroying Claire McCaskill in the polls. I'm 16 points ahead of her, Gary. I've got her up 19 points with women, 41 points with young people. If you're worried about young people turning to Marxism or turning into Bernie bros or hanging out with the Democratic Socialists, if Austin Petersen is the Republican Senate primary candidate, well, woe be to Claire. She's going to have to divide her forces. The campuses are going to go from blue to red. We're going to have AP for Senate signs all over these college campuses because they don't want old Claire. What has she done for young people? And here I am, the Liberty Republican in this race, just lighting the brush fires across the whole state. Oh, and Gary, by the way, I heard today that Josh Hawley, now that Eric Greitens is gone, he might actually start campaigning. They're saying it's going to breathe new life into his campaign. He might actually get out there and start campaigning. Wouldn't that be wonderful to see? Maybe he should debate me, Gary. What do you think about that? Do you think he should come and debate me?
I think he'd be a fool. You'd rip him to pieces. Listen,
step into my parlor, said the spider to the fly.
Yeah, one of the things when you were running against Gary Johnson, and by the way, I was so disappointed in the Johnson nomination that I did not vote Libertarian for the first time for president in I don't know how long. But one of the things you guys discussed was this bakery deal where the guy is not going to do a wedding cake for a gay couple. Neither one of us, and I know you well enough to know that you're not opposed to people who love each other getting married. You probably don't think the government should have any effect on that at all. But you thought, I believe, that the baker should have the right to decide on his own whether or not he wanted to do this. And I want you to know that you've just been validated. The Supreme Court sided with the Colorado baker who refused to bake a wedding cake for a same-sex couple.
Yeah, they decided at 7-2. Only Ginsburg and Sotomayor dissented, which ought to tell you that it really is unconstitutional. And good for liberty. Obviously, I think that, we ought to have freedom of contract in this country. I mean, honestly, I think the government needs to get out of the marriage business entirely because that's what happens when you get the government and things like that. It should be a private contract. But, of course, that doesn't mean that everybody has to endorse it. If you believe in religious liberty, if somebody wants to have the right not to, should African Americans be able to refuse making Klan robes? Of course they should. What are we talking about here? Like, America was built foundationally on private property rights, it was built foundationally on freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, and freedom of association. And the problem is that because everybody's so black or white, that you have to be this or you have to be that. When somebody like you or I come along, Gary, and we're trying to say, hey, listen, they have the right to get married if they want to get married, that's a private contract, but then they can't force somebody to bake a cake for their wedding ceremony because they have freedom of religion. It's like you're the devil incarnate, It's unfortunate because it's like what's good is bad and what's bad is good. It's almost Orwellian, the world that we live in, that the position of liberty, the true position of liberty, which protects the freedoms of both parties, is the devil, right? We're the bad guys because we stick up for everybody's freedom. No, you have to pick a side. You're either with them or you're with us. You're with us or with the terrorists, and it's just I refuse to fall into that trap. But congratulations. The Supreme Court, I believe, ruled correctly, and religious liberty should be expanded in this country. And it's really just, again, it comes down to the government created this problem in the first place, and I'm happy to see now that they've ruled on the side of freedom. And let's have this conversation going forward. Frankly, I think that it's time. And you know what? Who better than a pro-life agnostic? I mean, Pride weekend, last weekend in Kansas City, we had some yard signs out there. The conservatives were attacking me for going out there and trying to win some conservative votes. 17 or 18% of the LGBT community voted for Donald Trump. There's a lot of them who voted for Donald Trump. And then alternatively, the LGBT community, they need to wake up and stop trying to force people to, have to accept their lifestyles in their businesses. So that's really where we're at. I mean, again, I'm not going to pick a side here. I'm on the side of freedom.
There you go. The nickname now, I guess, is awesome. Austin Petersen for Senate. Austin, thank you for being with us. Up against the clock, and I got to run.